I don't know what is going on.
Useful to us. We've paid attention to them. They've been civil in nature and very respectful, and I'm sure that that will continue with this public comment. So is Sean back? Sean Lanier? Sean Harrington?
Yes, sir, I'm back. We have one individual from the faculty, Professor Tini Sin. I believe she's on, and Colonel Wyatt will allow her into the meeting here to give comment.
We have to pause. We have to pause for a minute, Sean. The audio is not coming through on the stream.
Okay, sir. It sounds like we need to just take a quick operational pause. We're having sound difficulty with the live stream so that the public can hear. So we're going to get that fixed here, sir, in a second before Professor Tini Sin gives comment. Stand by, sir.
Nobody wants me to repeat myself, especially me. So.
Why is my audio?
Go into eCam right here.
Yeah.
MacBook Pro drop down. No, that should be right.
Yeah, it should be right. Okay. Somebody go on the. Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, that should be working. Can somebody listen to the stream?
Colonel Wyatt, I'm getting word that they can hear the sound fine on live stream. Not sure if you've got that situation fixed or not, but I'm getting feedback that we should be good to go.
That's the problem here. They're seeing now. Okay. I think we're good to go. You can hear us? Okay, great. I think we're good to go. Mr. Boland, I'm sorry to make you do this, but I believe we need to start with your opening comments. Okay, hold on a minute.
Bill Wyatt, are we good to go? Colonel Wyatt, we can't hear you if you were speaking.
Okay. Will you listen to the audio to see if... Yep. Okay, I believe... I believe we're good.
Okay. Mr. Boland, we're good to go, sir.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm getting my agendas a little mixed up as they sit right here in front of me, but a little bit out of order as we will take our public comment from Professor Tsa Model.
Jenny, you should be good to go.
I'm sorry. Is it my turn to speak? I couldn't hear.
Yes, it is.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Colonel Tsa Model, and I am a professor of economics in the Department of Economics and Business at VMI. And I've been at VMI since the fall of 2001. And I'm so happy to be able to speak with you directly, especially with Dr. Underwood here and Secretary Carney, as well as the members of the Board of Visitors. What I'm about to say, you've heard me say before, some of you, but I think it's important enough that it needs repeating. Long before the Washington Post articles, there was a group of faculty that met, and we call ourselves the Working Group of Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity. And we have been meeting since July, a smaller group, and then since August, when General Moreshi gave us the go-ahead, that's our Dean of Faculty. We've been meeting every week, about 40 of us in total, but about 25 to 30 core members. And we have the expertise. You know, I know that you want to gather data to figure out what the climate is at VMI. Some of us, for our living, for our research, we design surveys. We submit our results to peer-reviewed articles. We publish, and we are also in the classrooms. At VMI, we're academic advisors. We are with our advisees for the 4 years that they are here. So we know them really well. We mentor faculty clubs. Some of us mentor the rugby club. Some of us mentor the leadership book club. Some of us mentor the Pramaji club. And so we know our cadets. So we are putting our expertise at your service. In fact, we want to. We are part of VMI. And we would really like to be part of this process formally so that we can systematically help you. I know we also understand, this is the thing that's different about VMI. We understand that we are a liberal arts college, but we are a senior military college. It's a different model than just a military academy or just a liberal arts school. And as I said, I've been here since 2001. I get it. I really understand it. And we are as driven and as committed to the core principles of VMI, honor, integrity, the citizen soldier model. And we know that statues don't define us. Our cadets define us, right? VMI has the best alumni, and that's because they understand and they imbue the core values. So we're part of that. You know, we're not alum, but we really do understand. And so we really want to be part of it. We care about VMI. And part of the reason you keep hearing from the same people, by the way, is our class schedules. So you guys meet in the morning, and those who have classes can't come in the morning. So that might change with final exam schedules. But I'm speaking for a large group, not just for myself, even though you hear me a lot. That's what I wanted to say. We are at your disposal. Please make use of our expertise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. We appreciate your comments and coming to this meeting. Next on, Sean, are there any other public comments?
No, sir, we don't have any other public comment this time.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. Secretary Carney, sir, we would love to hear from you this morning.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you. Good morning to the superintendent and the board. Thank you so much for giving myself and Dr. Underwood an opportunity to meet with you. We met about a week and a half ago, right before Thanksgiving, with the Subcommittee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at BMI. So thank you for that opportunity. We have this meeting where Dr. Underwood will do a detailed presentation for the board on diversity, equity, inclusive practices, some of the models that are being applied in other institutions of higher education. And then we'll have a more interactive meeting, I believe scheduled next week. So really appreciate this opportunity to work with you all. Like Professor Ten said, there's a lot of great work that's being done at BMI. We definitely want to leverage that. And also, I want to reiterate, like I mentioned in the meeting that we had with the subcommittee, is that BMI has a long tradition of preparing amazing leaders in all walks of life, whether it's military, whether it's in the civilian space. So we have a great opportunity as these cadets that you all serve work more and more on their leadership skills with diversity, equity, and inclusion, because they really do change the world. They do lead the world and our society. So it's really, really amazing that we're having this opportunity. With DEI work, we engage with higher institutions of higher ed at a very high level. We have conversations, either whether it's through our equity summit with their presidents, or sometimes we engage with the boards. But this is the first time in Commonwealth history where a governor's administration has so deeply engaged with the institution of higher ed. I believe this is a great opportunity for us to create an exemplar for rest of the institutions in the Commonwealth and even be a national exemplar. So really appreciate the opportunity. In the last few weeks, you all have taken some really proactive steps to create a more inclusive setting at BMI. We really, really appreciate that. And I'm really excited about this opportunity and working with you all. I know Dr. Underwood is really, really excited. So Mr. Chairman, thank you again for this opportunity. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. I really appreciate those remarks. Next on the agenda, we'll hear from General Wins, but before that, as the board knows, under our bylaws, the executive committee can act on behalf of the board. And we had some one-on-one discussions with the full board about this. So the executive committee obviously made the decision to hire General Wins as interim superintendent. He's in his second week and he is surviving very well, I would say. So at this time, I would entertain a motion that the board ratify the actions of the executive committee in hiring General Wins as our interim superintendent. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll move.
Any discussion? In favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no.
Aye.
Thank you. It carries unanimously. Congratulations, General Wins. And sir, we would like to hear from you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bowler. To Secretary Carney and Dr. Underwood, I just want to say thank you for your leadership and your willingness to help give us your insights, your expertise, and your understanding of many of the things that we are going to have to grapple with here at VMI and have already begun to tackle. To the board members who have not had an opportunity to personally meet, I'd just like to introduce myself and thank you for the vote of confidence. I'm sure that over the coming weeks and months, there will be an opportunity for me to engage with you, and I look forward to it because I want to ensure that the direction that we move in, that there's a healthy dialogue and a healthy debate as we arrive at the right solutions to move VMI forward. So I look forward to that. As Mr. Boland mentioned, I'm on my second week. I think you all kind of tried to ease me into the first week. And then, of course, this week we've had just on Monday alone some pretty significant events that have happened and that will continue to happen. I'm getting familiar with my staff here. I've had an opportunity to speak to the Corps of Cadets prior to their departure, and to just kind of impress upon them where I'm coming from as a military leader of 34 years, recognizing that on one hand, I think as Dr. Sin indicated, this is a institution of higher learning. It's a college, but it's also a senior military college where there are certain aspects that are unique to VMI that center on character development and character building of young men and women to go out into the world and meet many of the challenges that we have. And so I am humbled by the opportunity and excited as well, because I think that there is a lot that can be done to continue to have VMI have the reputation academically and in the shaping of leaders that it has. And so one of the messages that I had for the Corps was that I wanted to kind of reinvigorate a culture of competitiveness and winning here at the Institute. And to be clear, when I say that, I'm talking about everything from what goes on the Hill as we grow and develop young leaders through the adversarial system, the rat line, the regimental system, but also in the academic space. Yeah, Ms. Mullen, can you hear me?
Your video locked up and your audio stopped. So
okay.
You were talking about winning and your definition, what you mean by that.
Okay. Can you hear me now? All right. So this culture of competition, spirited competition and winning, I think has always been present at VMI. It certainly was over my years here, and perhaps it ebbs and flows, and perhaps it's resident now. I have not been here long enough to truly assess it, but I want to do that in such a way where people recognize that it applies on the Hill through the adversarial system, as well as through the regimental system. It applies in the classroom. It applies in our endeavors that we do with respect to the activities that take place over at the Center of Leadership and Ethics, which is a keystone, if you will, for how we can help leaders understand what it means to compete and win. And also in the 18 Division I athletic teams that we put out on the field to compete as well. And so I want to either reinvigorate or reestablish that type of atmosphere here at VMI. And I recognize that as the interim superintendent, probably the best that I can do is to set the conditions. But I want to set the conditions in such a way where there's an appreciation by everybody associated with VMI. That's important. And then the other thing is I've been doing a lot of reading, and then it has to do with just kind of getting an appreciation and understanding of some of the challenges that we face. And so I've had an opportunity to read the 4 Pillars document. I've had an opportunity to read the 2039 strategy. And we're going to be working on some things. I've got the staff kind of doing some storming and norming, if you will, on a few things as it pertains where we can set out a path, documented, signed, and approved, and properly vetted on the direction that VMI needs to move to bring us into more of an inclusive environment, an environment that embraces diversity, an environment that is mutually supporting in the various different aspects of what we do academically, militarily, physically, and in all other walks of life. I was truly impressed by the comments by Dr. Underwood and the education that she gave during the last session. I think that more of that needs to occur with open eyes and open ears. I think that we need to take off any type of armor, any type of resistance that we have to having a discussion and dialogue about race, about racism, about those types of things for the betterment of the Corps of Cadets. So with that, I'll stop. Again, I'm into my second week. You will start to see here, I believe, in the first of the year, some products that we will produce. I do intend to engage the Corps, the faculty, the admin staff, and the likes to gain their input before we start publishing things. So if we're being a little slow, it's because I want to be deliberate about some of those things, but I want to fix the things that we know we can fix. But I want to be a little bit more deliberate about some of the things so that we really can get to the root of the problems that might exist that we can shape and improve. So with that, I'll stop, and I just would like to thank everybody for the vote of confidence.
Thanks very much, General. We appreciate those comments, and the board looks forward to continuing to work with you. Next on the agenda are reports from the Search Committee, the DEI Committee, and the Memorials Committee chaired by Richard Hines. I thought it was important for the full board to hear what these committees have been doing. They've had some meetings and have been taking some action. So I've asked each of the chairs of those committees to provide a 5-minute report on their activities. And we'll start with the Search Committee chaired by Gene Scott. Gene?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. I just want to say that this has been quite a journey thus far, and I'm very appreciative of the task that we have at hand, which is certainly the most important thing that a board can do in terms of selecting the next superintendent. We were tasked as a committee to provide at least 3 to 4 qualified candidates for the board, the full board, to review and select. Our board consists of 13 members. We have 3 members that are non-board members from the faculty, from the community, and from the Alumni Association. We have had our first meeting. We set about the task of selecting a search firm. We did do that. We selected Whitkeeper. That's public. The document has been signed. They were the firm that is currently doing Old Dominion's presidential search. And that works out extraordinarily well for us because one of our board members, Conrad Hall, who was a former board member at Old Dominion, is on that search committee. And Conrad has been extraordinarily valuable in helping us with the insight that we've gotten from Old Dominion. I've had several conversations with Bruce Bradley, who is chairing their search committee, and they're further along the track than we are at this point in time. But we're extremely pleased with where we are. And I think at this point in time, I want to update you on 3 things. And that is the search firm, along with the committee, is developing the superintendent criteria. We will have that completed this month. Then we will start the process of publicly making the announcement for candidates. That will occur in January with the purpose of updating the board in the January meeting, which we will be conducting obviously at our next formal BOV meeting. We will start the process of interviewing the candidates with an outcome of the April timeframe, with optimistically the ability to present to the full board at the May meeting. again, if all goes well, that's our tentative timeline. The next thing is that with the selection of the search committee with Kiefer, we've initially started the listening sessions, which is extremely important with key stakeholders. And we're doing it two ways to be totally transparent. We are going to the cadets, which we did that on this past Friday, and it was extraordinarily eye-opening in a positive way. So we did on Friday the seconds and thirds, and then we had the first and the rats following that session, and they were very mature and very balanced in their comments. We will have the alumni session today. We'll have two sessions with the alumni groups, and that's going to be done via a town hall. Then we'll have the faculty, staff, the classified, hourly employees, as well as the Parents Council. That will be done within the next week. And so these are kind of back to back to back, and there are multiple segments of these groups that we'll be meeting with via Zoom. And in addition to that, we're having discussions one-on-one by members of the committee with key stakeholders identified as key influencers to VMI. And that's to get insight as to what we should be seeking in our next superintendent, to provide that as a roll-up to the search firm. The last thing that I want to say is that our goal in this whole process is to be extraordinarily transparent. We've adopted, again, the Old Dominion model, where everything that we can publish, we will. We've established a website for the search process, whereby anyone can provide input to the search committee and to the search firm. And we will provide updates on minutes and all the information that we publish relative to this process, so that if anybody says anything, they may not like the outcome, but they can say it's extraordinarily fair and open, and that's our goal. Subject to your questions, Mr. President, or any members of the Board of Visitors, or I'd like to ask any member of the committee anything that you may want to add to this process. Please do.
Any questions or comments of Jean? Jean, on the criteria that you're all working on that you hope to have completed, I think you said by this month or next.
This month, yes.
I think before you finalize it, it would be appropriate to circulate that to the full board for input.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. Good, thank you. I have to say that every time I talk to Gene, tongue in cheek, he thanks me for appointing him to this position. It's a lot of work, and we greatly appreciate you carrying it on your broad shoulders, Gene. We'll hear next from Mike Hamler on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Mike, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. We've been working very hard, very diligently, and I'll keep our comments brief in the interest of time. But if anybody has any other questions, concerns, comments, please feel free to reach out to me or any committee member. We've been working since our last meeting, closely with Dr. Underwood and her staff, and we want to thank her for all of her enlightenment to this situation and information that has been very helpful for us. We've passed that on to General Wins and to the administration. And I'm very happy to report that we do have an internal document and a draft for the position. That's being vetted by General Wins and the administration at this time. It's not ready for public yet, but once that document is complete, it is my understanding that that will be shared with everyone publicly. Again, as Mr. Scott just said, we want to be as very transparent and open as possible through all of the processes here. So that's one document that I'm very happy that they worked on in such a short period of time. And I do want to make sure everybody understands, we've only been working on the document for a couple of weeks. But we as a board and as an alumni association and as an institution they have been working on this for a while. I had a great conversation with the Alumni Association on yesterday with Tom Brashers, Grant Harris, and Dr. Carlton Brown. And you know, believe it or not, they actually have a diversity and inclusion subcommittee that they started 2 years ago. And most people don't know that. They've been working very hard on these issues and things that through the Alumni Association. And Grant Harris is class of 06 at VMI. So just want to make sure that we mention that. Also, you know, we had public comment last time, and as a committee and as a board and as an institution, we listen. I know there were some cadet on the last public comment. I know there were some professors and faculty amongst other folks. So as a committee, we have asked General Wins and the administration, with his permission and guidance, that we add two ex officio members, one as a cadet from the Corps, and then also a faculty staff member. Once those names have been vetted and ready for release, General Wins and his staff at the appropriate time will announce those names. So very excited to see that we're moving forward and we're, you know, receiving input from everybody. We will have another meeting, but our next meeting probably will not be scheduled until after first of the year. We have a lot of meetings already scheduled with the search committee, with the Board of Visitors, and then we have the pleasure of meeting with Dr. Underwood and Secretary Carney again, I think next week. So we don't want to overload everybody, but in the meantime, our committee will be working very hard and diligently over the course of that time. So I do want to thank our committee members and list those and tell everybody who they are. We have our vice chair, which is Laura Chambers. We have Tom Watson, Lester Johnson, Dave Miller, Scott Marsh, General Domini, and Joe Reeder are the committee members. I think I've hit all the highlights. I know in the interest of time, I want to make sure we stay within our 5 minutes, but I would ask any other committee member, or if General Wins or anybody has anything else to add to that brief report.
Thanks very much, Mike. Nice job doing that. I remind the board as a matter of governance and principles here that while we have directed the administration to create the position of a chief diversity officer, that will be an administration hire. Those of us who've been around more than a year know that the board does not engage in hiring of staff, faculty, or administrators. The only position we are responsible for filling is that of the superintendent. So I'm sure that the administration would listen to any recommendations that we have, just like they listen to recommendations for admission of cadets. You know, if you've done that, you know how successful that is coming from a board member. But remember, this is an administrative hire. So thanks again, Mike. Richard Hines chairs the Commemorations and Memorials Naming Committee, and will have a brief report for us. Good morning, Richard.
Thank you, Mr. President. Secretary Carney, Dr. Underwood, and General Wins. Welcome everyone to our committee report this morning. We are the public face of the Institute, and as a result, what we are doing needs to be as public as we can possibly make it. We acted as quickly as we could after the creation of this committee on October 29, and on November 17, the committee had its first meeting. Our job is simple. It is thoughtfully to review the controversial commemorations on post to ensure that they are appropriate to be on post in 2020. Perhaps Colonel Sims put it even better, and I will modify that ever so slightly. We want to be sure that our statutes do not improperly define us. That's our job. The full board made the decision on the Jackson statute in October. Our question is, are there other changes to be made? That is the question that the committee is facing. With military in our middle name, with our being an active part of the Virginia militia under the control of the governor and the legislature in the 1860s, we admittedly have a complex 19th century history. So how does this committee deal with the Institute's historical tributes in the light of the ever-evolving cultural sensibilities and emotions? Our job is a tough one. Our job is a simple one. Our job is simply to get it right. As I said, we are so public that as a part of our newly created charter, I just want to read our concluding elements to the charter. Obviously, we are here to review memorials, review places, names, and so forth. We're also here to look to the future. But in doing all of that, our charter provides that in exercising its oversight and providing recommendations to the full board for approval, the committee shall consider, among other things, VMI's mission of producing citizen soldiers imbued with honor, civility, and respect, and shall ensure that all memorials properly reflect the Institute's commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So that is a core element of what this committee will be doing in exercising its responsibilities. The committee is made up of 11 members. We have 4 board members. We have 7 non-board members. One of our board members has been involved in controversial memorials for more than 2 decades with the Museum of the Civil War. And because of his efforts on diversity inclusion, he has been recognized, and the museum has been recognized by the legislature to receive a $1 million grant so that the public school children of Virginia can attend the museum for free. So we have, from that standpoint, expertise that would not otherwise be available to us from the board. We also have on the board 3 African Americans. We have 2 board members who are African Americans, and one of our non-board members will be next year's president of the Alumni Association. We have 3 women on the committee. One is a member of the faculty. One is from our government relations. And we have a wholly unconnected female with VMI. That's Professor Carolyn Janey. She is the head of the Now Center at the University of Virginia. She is an expert in Civil War studies. She is an expert in 19th century history, and she will bring to the committee from the University of Virginia all of her expertise as well. In addition, from the Corps of Cadets, we have the Regimental S5, who is a public relations officer for the regimental staff. He has been exceedingly instrumental in reaching out to the Corps and obtaining information for the Corps. And we also have the head of the museum systems, Colonel Gibson. For those of you who saw our initial committee meeting, you saw that Colonel Gibson had chronicled 30+ items that he felt were controversial and should be reviewed by the committee. He has rearranged those to some extent to group them via personalities. That is, who was the person around whom those symbols are centered. We will be analyzing that. We will be analyzing that from the criteria that we are developing. When we moved into this area, we looked thoroughly through the state to see if there was any criteria from the state with respect to review of controversial commemorations. There were none. We were able to go to a federal agency, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. We looked at their principles. Their principles are essentially to balance the stewardship and preservation obligations that the owner of the commemoration has, to balance that responsibility with present day sensibilities, cultural responses, and emotions. Another one of the principles is for consultation and inclusion. And that's what we are doing. All members of our committee have been reaching out to others. As I said, the S5 has consulted with the Corps of Cadets. Our faculty representative, Major Ingersoll, has consulted with the 3 faculty members that Colonel Sims was talking about earlier this morning. Colonel Sims is the Promachi Club advisor, and Major Ingersoll has now reached out to the entire faculty for the input of the entire faculty. And of course, we have Professor Janie at UVA, who will bring all of her expertise to this committee. We intend to have our next committee meeting early next month. By then, we will have refined the criteria that we will be using in the review process. And by the January board meeting, Mr. President, we hope to have some firm initial reports for the full board's consideration. That ends my report, subject to comments from the other committee members or any questions anyone might have.
Thank you very much, Richard. My only observation is that to me seems to be a very aggressive time. If you're not going to have the criteria developed until early in January, we're meeting in late January, and I think that once you have the criteria, there may be a need for additional listening. So to hear from people once they know what the criteria is, but that's just my observation.
No, that's right, and that's what we are analyzing. That we're trying to both analyze and prioritize to see where we're moving forward, and keeping it slow and steady, as we know, wins the race. But we also know that there's a trailing wind on us to move forward. So we're balancing both of those.
I certainly appreciate that. Once you finalize the criteria or come close to finalizing, I think that should probably be circulated with the full board as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Richard? All right, thanks very much. Next on the agenda, we'll hear from Dr. Janice Underwood. For those of you who were not at the initial DEI committee meeting where Dr. Underwood made her presentation, she, to put it bluntly, she does a good job. She is entertaining, she's to the point, and is very provocative and makes you think. So I'm sure we will have all those qualities from you this morning as well, Dr. Underwood. The floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm going to give you a caveat. I am Zooming from the Addicts Theater in Norfolk, Virginia. I am using my phone as a hotspot, so my internet is unstable. If I break up, I'm not sure how that will go. So it may be best if you all control the PowerPoint. Not sure if you all received it.
Sean, can you do that? Or
yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're prepared to do that. Colonel Wyatt's going to pull it up. Oh, there it is.
Okay, and maybe you should, if Dr. Underwood loses her connection, text her a phone number so she can call in.
That would be great.
Okay.
But let's go ahead and get started. What I may do is, I think I'm going to stop my video, which may help with the bandwidth. And then you can just hear my voice. Give me a thumbs up if y'all are ready to rock and roll. All right, I love it. It's going to be some interactive. It's going to be provocative, but it's going to be fun. So I'd just like to say hello and thank you for the kind introduction. Greetings, Mr. Boland, members of the board, Major General Wins, and all honored guests. I am so excited to be with you all again today. It was, as Secretary Carney mentioned, about a week and a half ago that we came together for our first meeting in the month of December. But I really appreciate the words of the professor who spoke on behalf of the faculty on post. Let me be clear, I was a former faculty member at ODU, and so I know how valuable the faculty are to a culture of an institution of higher ed, and in particular at VMI, how valuable the faculty constituency is in shaping the cadets. So I can assure all the faculty that are listening in, watching, that you will be a part of the work ahead. We have specifically and intentionally included you in this work and in the work in the coming months and days and years. And so it's so important for you to know that in particular, your voice will be a prioritized element of the special investigation team, of Major General Wins, of the board of visitors. Everyone will need your expertise, and in fact will only be successful if they are informed by the value that you bring as faculty. And likewise, all of the constituencies. This will not be a successful initiative unless we have all voices at the table. And that's why I talked a little bit about being at the table last week or week and a half. Next slide. So last time I started with a quote by Richard Rothstein, and today I start with this quote. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, or we can walk through lightly, ready to imagine another world. And so the author of The God of Small Things, I thought this was perfect as we think about the larger public health crisis that our country has been dealing with long before COVID-19 became as deadly as it has been, is that of structural racism that started on our shores 401 years ago in Hampton, Virginia. Next slide. When we first met about a week and a half ago, I shared this image with you based on our shared goal. Many Virginians in one Commonwealth, I told you, is who we are and who we want to be. And I'm going to be honest with you, the Commonwealth of Virginia has made enormous progress, especially in the last 2 years under the Northam administration. But we have a long way to go and a lot more work to do. And it's my honor to guide you on this journey. Perhaps one of the most important investments that the Virginia Military Institute will ever make is to become an institution that promotes inclusive excellence as you embed those DEI principles into all that you're already doing to make citizen soldiers. So let's get started. It's going to be so important. VMI cadets will be the leaders of our world. And so I'm so honored to be a part of this important work. Next slide. Let's do a quick review. I'm a teacher. Remember that? I told you I was a biology teacher. And so I always, when we have class, right, and this class is in session, I heard from Major General Wins, and I've spoken with several members of the board, and they said, you know, the presentation last time was really great, but there were several board members that couldn't be with us. And so I wanted to just do a quick recap. The last time I presented to the Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee, we talked about best practices. We explored some of the key tenets of implementing a DEI strategy, such as identifying a vice president of diversity, the do's and don'ts, so to speak. But today, my mission is to help you get a deeper understanding of the principles of DEI and then learn actionable steps of having difficult conversations. So if you don't already have a pen and paper handy, I'm asking you to get your paper out, your pencil, your pen out. Let's get ready for class. Next slide. All right, here was a slide that we talked about last time. These are the best practices in implementing diversity initiatives in higher ed. I thought this was a really important slide, just as a recap. This was actually the day that I was announced, the governor announced me in 2019 to serve as the state and nation's first cabinet level chief diversity officer in a governor's office. And in the same way that I report directly to Governor Northam, have his, have his number on speed dial, is because it's important to have that person, that diversity officer, report directly to the agency head. So I really recommended that your VP of diversity report directly to the superintendent, to Major General Wins in this case. It should be an executive cabinet role, and one way that you can empower this person is through institutional memberships that will help support not only the Office of Diversity at VMI or on post, but also to help with sort of embedding this work across all four corners of the institution, such as NADAHE, the National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Ed, AAAED, the American Association of Access, Equity, and Diversity. They have great professional development opportunities. I also encourage General Wins, when we spoke, that you should also be thinking about these and other national organizations to recruit your VP of diversity from. So advertise using these places. It's not enough just to advertise on Indeed.com or on the state website. The person that takes this role not only should report directly to the superintendent, but needs to have the street cred to do so, right? Needs to have the credentials to do so, as well as the emotional intelligence to understand that this is the hardest job you'll ever have. Take my word for it. And likewise, the leader, in this case, the superintendent, much like the governor does, knows that this was a hard ask. The governor knew that when he asked me to take this mission that I'm in, it was going to be the hardest thing that I ever did, given the circumstances, given the political landscape. And so in the same way that governor provides me support, and I mean unwavering support and understanding, and to the extent he can, empathy, to help me navigate these complex spaces, the superintendent at VMI needs to do the exact same thing, so that the person can work hand in hand with the superintendent to build faculty and student recruitment, to build an Office of Diversity, an inaugural one, in the same way that I have, so that it not only functions with regard to the HR compliance pieces, like the EEOC pieces, but also what are those transformative DEI initiatives that need to be undertaken. Last time I showed you a org chart of VCU's Institutional Office of Diversity, and how it broke down both sides of the coin, the compliance side and the transformative success side. Your new Institutional Office of Diversity should have not only a staff, but an equitable budget. You don't want your first VP of diversity to come in and be inequitably prepared in comparison to other mechanisms in the institution, so that this person can create a strategic diversity plan and link it with your overall institutional mission plan. So therefore, fostering accountability. I don't want this VP, and I don't think any of you want this VP, and I know General Wins doesn't want this VP of diversity to come in and do all this work and it just sit on a shelf. We want it embedded in real time so that we can start seeing what I call #diversity wins. We want some short-term wins. We want to build on some long-term wins. And so you've got to set the enabling conditions. Last time I talked about those enabling conditions for success. Next slide. As a good teacher, I can't not, follow up on your homework assignments, Mike Hamler. So I appreciate you giving us an update on the job description of where that is with the subcommittee, and I appreciate that it's already in the first draft. And kudos to and shout out to the subcommittee, the D&I subcommittee under your leadership, Mr. Hamler. And so that's really now in General Wins court, and you should all know that I've been honored to have conversations individually with you all, as well as General Wins, and I know that position is in good hands. But in addition to that, I asked you all, the D&I committee, to engage in honest dialogue, and this is where we're starting this now. But I realize that I can't ask you to engage in honest dialogue if I don't prepare you and equip you with what it is or how to do that. And so these are tough conversations. And books, I shared with you readings that I recommended, and there are actually others. So have you looked up these resources yet? Have you at least Googled them? If not, you should know I am truly expecting you to lead by example. To the whole board, since this is your first time with me as a full group, I strongly encourage you to seek out resources or others, not just the ones here. I have a list of resources that I will be sending to you all that I have synthesized in what they could be used for, not multimedia resources, videos, documentaries, books, and internet resources, PDFs, so that you can stretch yourselves and really understand what it means to be guided by equity and inclusive excellence. We went over the inclusive excellence framework last time and where it came from, and I talked to you about it being a national model. This is very personal work, but it's work that you will have to find time to do. It's not work you can skate over, because I know everyone on this Zoom is busy, overwhelmed, and probably multitasking even probably right now. Next slide. Last time we talked about the differences between tokenizing diversity. We talked about avoiding implementing your diversity strategy in a silo. So for example, VMI should move from prioritizing personal dimensions of diversity, such as the ones you see here about race, culture, economic status, so on and so forth, and instead embed organizational diversity across and throughout your unique mission on post. So these are the guiding questions that should guide your work, right? And so as you think about embedding DEI and a DEI strategy to really bolster or be that B12 shot into your overall mission, and really truly trying to get to where you want to be by 2039. I've read your Vision 2039 plan, and I think these are the guiding questions that we need to really look at, examine, and reckon with, and see how DEI can be used to make those happen. Next slide. So today I'm going to turn very quickly in the time we have left and talk about racing towards difficult conversations. Part of this presentation I presented to the Hampton Roads region as we thought about having a 7-city conversation about race and racism in 2019, as we thought about using literature and art to have these conversations, which is usually a great medium by which we can all appreciate, we can all appreciate art. And so I recommend the book by Claudia Rankin, The American Citizen, The American Lyric. Next slide. Let's talk about it. Before we talk about it, let me talk a little bit about discussion norms. And we're going to have a very interactive conversation on our third meeting, but I want to set the stage today. As we discuss a little bit today and more robustly with guiding questions that I'm going to push you all with in our next meeting next week, I'm going to center our conversations with these norms. Sometimes people call them ground rules. I usually call them norms. I love that General Wynn said storming and norming. 3 C's: speak with compassion, clarity, and courage. I know that those are things that are really embedded in the VMI culture, and particularly courage, right? And you get to the point, right? Clarity. But I'm going to push you a little bit with the compassion piece. So As General Wynn said, let's open up our ears and our minds and really think about these things in transformative ways. It's okay not to know everything about race and racism. I don't know everything. I don't propose to know everything. This is an ongoing journey, I told you last week, and it continues to be. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to think the wrong thing. But remember, we need to have a restorative path back for when we do demonstrate our incomplete knowledge of racial oppression. Discomfort is to be expected, but I encourage you to walk. And if you can't walk, lean towards that discomfort. It's okay. It's really okay. So that we can listen to others, engage in self-reflection and examine your own racial engagement. And when you're doing that, resist a discourse of defense. It is natural for us to be defensive because we all want to be experts in our spheres of influence. But we have to stop being defensive. In fact, that defensiveness is what sustains racism. Some people say talking about race and racism is what makes people racist. There are people probably on this Zoom call right now in the public saying, Dr. Underwood, you talk about race and racism too much, and you're the racist. I hear it all the time, and it's hogwash. These are the people that want to stop this conversation. They want to stop the inclusive model from transforming institutions of higher ed and other agencies and other institutions all around the world from really valuing diversity, equity, and inclusion. But let me be clear. Talking about race and racism is a good thing. It does not invalidate other forms of oppression. So people with disabilities, gender inequities, all other cultural differences do not become invalidated because we're talking about race and racism. In fact, racism is the ism that made all other forms of oppression possible. Let's talk about that. Next slide. Race is a fake thing. It's a fictitious social construct. It is man-made. We did that to ourselves. So therefore, it remains complicated and nuanced, but it's the system that we have in place right now. Let me say it again. Race is racism. The system that we use to synthesize humans using physical characteristics is a fictitious, socially man-made construct. It was created to classify humans because of slavery. So hey, this race is not is inferior, if you will, to another race. So it's okay, or this race is 3/5 of a human. It's okay to enslave them and have them as property. So racism is just the institutional system of oppression controlled by a dominant group of people to classify us, to say one group is dominant, one group is inferior. Now, racism is different from prejudice. Prejudice or bias are discriminatory beliefs or individual acts. So therefore, race and prejudice exist as different constructs. So I just want to level set for a moment and talk about these words because they're often thrown around so willy-nilly, and they all exist as different things, but are very interconnected. Let's talk for a moment about the difference between equality and equity. Next slide. I don't like this picture very much. Next slide. Here it is. But it does illuminate this idea of equality when you look at the boxes. Instead, I like to think about it using this picture. Next slide. In this first image, all the way to the left, it is assumed that everyone benefits from the same support. So this, instead of using boxes, and we're going to use rocks, right? So you got the same rock right there, right? Everyone is being treated equally, but as you can see, everyone cannot access the view. In the second image, individuals are given different support to make it possible for them to have equal access to the view. So now you can see that everyone can see over the fence. They're being treated equitably. In this middle picture, we are giving people what they need to be successful. So let me be clear, equity and equality are two different things. Equity is the mechanism that gets us closer to equality, that gets us closer to liberty and justice for all. But let's look at this third picture. This is the one that really gets me. In this third image, which is a bit different from all the others, I don't know if you can tell what's missing, all three individuals can see the view without any support because the cause of the inequality was addressed. The systemic barrier has actually been removed. So think of our inequitable systems as the fence. Right now, we are striving to provide equitable accommodations to individuals, which is kind of represented by the middle picture. But the actual goal for me is to remove the inequitable system that creates the barrier in the first place. And let me level set again. It is really hard for all of us to even agree that the fence is there. We must agree on the problem. We need to be able to state the problem to do something about it. But our goal, no question, is to remove the inequity and seek justice and equal opportunity for all. Next slide. How do we do that? Well, we've got to think about racism from a different lens, and we've got to throw away this invisible binary. Robin DiAngelo calls it the invisible binary, where racism or someone who is a racist is a bad person. Someone who's not a racist is a good person. And so this is where it becomes polarizing, and this is where it becomes personal. This is where the defense mechanisms come up, and this is where the political fragility comes in. So the foundational problem that we face is that we don't know how to talk about race and racism. It's the only topic that we whisper about when we're in a group because we don't want anyone to hear us say the words white or black, that white woman over there, that black man over there. Robin DiAngelo says that an invisible binary makes it even more complicated because not only do we not know how to talk about race and racism, this false binary muddies the waters and fools us into these categories. So if you're a racist person, you're bigoted, ignorant, prejudiced, hateful, mean-spirited, or this is somebody who has been lynching someone. I know that's hard to say and hear, because it couldn't be that someone is racist if they haven't lynched someone. Because, hey, I'm not racist. I don't lynch anyone. I don't burn crosses on anyone's lawn. You know, I'm a good person. I'm educated. Everyone on this call is highly educated, right? I'm highly educated. Janice Underwood has a PhD. I'm highly educated. I couldn't possibly be racist. I'm open-minded and I'm well-intended. We have a lot of well-intended, really woke people that want to do the right thing and often insert their racism into the conversation and don't even realize it. Trust me, I know. We talked about that. I think someone mentioned, someone had the question last time, what was your biggest challenge? And I talked about those really well-intended people who actually undermine the work. What about polite people? I'm very polite. Bless your heart. I'm polite. I can't possibly be racist. And by the way, I have Black friends. I can't be racist. The binary makes talking about race and racism so difficult because it maintains racism as the status quo. Next slide. So why is it so difficult to talk about race and racism? The bystander statements that we use, and you say, wait a minute. What do you mean bystander statements? The reason why racism is so difficult to talk about is because the system of race that has been created for our world, and in particular, the United States of America, it was created, Google this, scientific racism. We literally use, Thomas Jefferson literally used the system of scientific racism to justify American slavery while having his own slaves and having children with his own slaves. Let's think about that for a minute. Here's a picture by Joseph William Turner called The Slave Ship. And this is a picture actually that depicts a slave owner or someone who was moving slaves from the coast of Africa to the United States, to the Americas. And most of his cargo died while on the ship because of the conditions. And this particular portrait by Turner demonstrates or shows that, as you can see the ship off in the distance, what the slave trader did was he dumped the cargo, because if he showed up to the Americas with 95% of his cargo dead, he would get no money for them. Instead, he said that he dumped them, he lost them in transit, and he could cash in the insurance so that he would come out somewhat on top. And the bodies were dumped into the ocean. And those who were, those bodies and those, oh my God, some who were alive were, of course, drowned, killed, or eaten by sharks or taken over by the elements. American racism makes this a difficult topic because nobody wants to feel guilty about things that nobody on this call, nobody who exists now, had nothing to do with that. None of us did. None of us did that. So let's stop the conversation about, I'm not racist because I didn't hold slaves, right? But we all, as Claudia Rankine said, we all have a positionality to this topic. We all have proximity to this topic. In the same way, no one on this call, no one listening to this call, and no one who exists now in 2020 was around to shape the Declaration of Independence. We all still benefit from it. We all still abide by it. And we all still engage with it and see vestiges of it in our society. And the same is true with the system of American slavery and institutional racism. Let's talk a bit about those bystander statements. Next slide. I won't go over all of them, but I'm going to encourage the board and the VMI administration to stop saying these statements. These are the kinds of bystander statements like, I don't see color. Everyone struggles in life, but if you work hard, you will be successful. Or, racism is in the past. I have Black friends. Or the one, if you just pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you work hard. These types of statements actually sustain institutional racism and take race off the table. It's because people don't feel comfortable or don't feel empowered or educated enough to have the conversation. So this is our way of saying, hey, we don't even have to have this conversation. I don't see color, right? Or there are others. Next slide. Let me let you see a few others. I just hire the best person. When my great-grandmother immigrated to the US, my family was discriminated against too, so I know what it means to be a person of color. Or we don't have racism in my institution. I have Black people in my family. I am married to a person of color. I adopted a child of color. My best friend is Black. So this one is very popular. I had a really hard life. I'm white. I worked for everything. You don't know what I've been through. I don't have privilege. And just so that I can be clear, we all have a level of privilege, and privilege is real. Next slide. Let's stop and move away from these kind of conversations, these bystander statements that really invalidate this issue. And let's understand what bias is. Bias is just simply the stories we tell ourselves about an individual or a group. They come from our limited personal life experiences. It's a way of our brain sort of doing a shortcut. We summarize large sums of data from our limited life experience in our silo, if you will, and then we apply it or generalize it to all people that we see that represent that experience, right? So it's bias is just, when you hear somebody say, these were my personal experiences, well, guess what? That's what biases me. And you've heard me along the way talk about, I am biased in higher education. I told you my first presentation was based upon a lot of my experiences in working in higher ed. Of course, I've applied these DEI experiences with regard to business partners and in commerce and trade. And I talk with business a lot in DEI in the corporate sector. But my bias is for education. My expertise is in education, and that's my body of work. So I really appreciated the professor talking about, you know, we do this work. We have surveys, we publish articles. I haven't published a peer-reviewed article in a year, and I'm itching to do that because that's my bias. I lean towards the world of academia. So understand bias. I've heard many of you all say the word bias, and I want to make sure you understand that these are your lived experiences. And I want to also, and I sent this to you all, this presentation is, you all will have this presentation. In the notes section of this slide is a video called Cracking the Code. And I leave you with the overarching question. If the US experienced centuries of explicit laws in support of racism, which we know our country has done, and that's not to be debated, right? We had Jim Crow laws, we had American slavery, right? Why would anyone expect a race-neutral society in the last 50 years? Why would anyone think that that's possible when our systems have been in place for centuries in this way? Next slide. I heard you all talk about microaggressions the last time, and microaggressions are seemingly benign statements that are actually rooted in bias and bigotry. And it's because of our lived experiences that we don't realize what we're saying is offensive to someone else. And so I heard a few people in my conversations mention microaggressions, and that at VMI, when we hear a microaggression, we act immediately. But I'm wondering, do you? Because sometimes microaggressions are said by people and they don't even realize they've said them. So when you're around and you hear a microaggression, even if you aren't the ones who gave it, when you see something, say something. I call it the Tsa Model. We cannot be silent about microaggressions. They allow macroaggressions to happen. Those tiny individual statements like, you know, I could not believe it, but Dr. Underwood was so incredibly articulate. That's a microaggression. It's not a compliment. It's a microaggression. Why wouldn't you expect Dr. Underwood to be articulate? And that's just a very general one that I'll add. There's a video for you all to watch. And in the interest of time, I inserted in the PowerPoint of what would you do. You all remember that show that comes on? And it puts you in these situations, and you're going to hear micro and macroaggressions verbally at to a mom from a waitress in a diner. And so please do watch that as part of your homework before we get to our final presentation next week. Dr. King says, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. And we know that injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. And so in the same way that Breonna Taylor, let me say her name to you, was taken from us in Kentucky, and that happened, that no-knock warrant happened in Kentucky, the Northern administration in the Commonwealth of Virginia took decisive action to ban no-knock warrants in Virginia, because it's not enough to just say, well, that hasn't happened here yet. Well, it happened in Kentucky, and an injustice in Kentucky is an injustice in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we want to ensure that that doesn't happen here. And so I suggest and I encourage the board to really understand what it means to take decisive action when you hear a microaggression, so that you can stop them and prevent them from being macroaggressions later. Next slide. All right, quick quiz. Is this a microaggression, an honest mistake, or something else? This is an H&M ad. I only use this to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. Anybody, raise your hand if you remember seeing this ad. Anybody remember seeing this ad? I'm looking through the screen. I see some hands. Great. Well, listen, H&M, multi-billion-dollar company, put this ad up and didn't see anything wrong with it. I mean, paid lots and lots of money for this ad. And I'm gonna be clear with you, there's a little boy in orange looking over at the young man in the green sweatshirt. And even he says, I feel a little uncomfortable being here. He even knows something's wrong with this. You don't, because you understand that calling African Americans or Black people monkeys has historically been a racial slur, you should know better than to say or use even a subtle word like monkeys, especially in a multinational, multi-million-dollar ad such as this. But how was this allowed to go from the cutting floor onto the big stage? Was there diversity at the top, in the top decision-making parts of H&M? Was there somebody there to say, wait a minute, we don't want to do this and waste millions and millions of dollars on an ad that we're going to ultimately have to take down and apologize for and lose money on? Microaggression, honest mistake, something else worse? I don't know. Just wanted to give you that tangible example. Next slide. Here's another example you might remember. Is this a microaggression, an honest mistake, or something else? So are you telling me that I can wake up Black, take a shower using Dove, and turn white? Is that a microaggression, an honest mistake, or something else? Dove had to apologize for this, take this down, and then do a lot of PR work to make it right. So I'm here to just share these examples very quickly with you in the interest of time, to say microaggressions can also be not only verbal statements, but they can be the things that we put out into the ethos. They could be part of our documents and our policies and our procedures, our work products. So be thinking about what a microaggression and a macroaggression really are. Questions so far? I'm almost done. Next slide. So how do we promote inclusion across these many dimensions of diversity at VMI and on post? I want to be clear that diversity, as we move away from just the personal characteristics, I want to expand what diversity really means and how do we promote inclusive excellence? How do we increase the inclusive nature of not only our workforce on post, but also, you know, our student body? How do we engage the community that surrounds VMI? Next slide. This is how you do it. The way you do it, in looking at this iceberg image, and I know all of you all have seen the cultural iceberg. It's what took down the Titanic because they didn't know what was underneath, right? We want to be sure that we protect VMI from these icebergs, that these are the underlying conditions that that we need to leverage and build on as strengths. So you do it by leveraging perceptions, attitudes, beliefs, and values across all these factors you see here under the iceberg. And it's when we do that, because the only thing you can see are behaviors and practices in that iceberg. And in the same way in our organizations, no matter where you are, which organization you're in, I don't care if you're in the White House, I don't care if you're in the governor's office, I don't care if you're the CEO of Amazon or Disney or at VMI. What we see are behaviors and practices, but what we don't see are those hidden perceptions, attitudes, beliefs, and values. So let's start working on those. Next slide. And this is my last slide because I wanted to leave time for questions. I've come to the end of the presentation, and I'd like to once again thank the board for their invitation and just note that Secretary Carney and I will meet with you all one more time in December, on December 15th, with the VMI leadership and the board before year's end. And Mr. Boland, I'll turn it over to you, but before I turn it over to you, I hope you all have taken copious notes. I will be touching base with you all soon, and you know that I'm just a phone call away. Many of you have taken me up on that, and I'm so glad to have heard from many of you. But we need to also think about, and I'll end with this, because these are difficult conversations, we have to change the way we talk about this. And Mr. Boland, I talked a little bit about this with you the other last week. So having a strong communications plan is going to be important. How we talk about this work, how we then say this is the work that you all are leading, is going to be key. And so we'll delve into that a little deeper on December 15th. And but how to have these difficult conversations. I hope that you have gained something from today. And I certainly look forward to the work ahead with all of the constituencies on post. So thank you so much. Mr. Boland, do you or other members have any questions for me?
Dr. Underwood, thank you very, very much. It was extremely well done, and very, very thought-provoking, as I know who it would be. Does any board member have any questions for Dr. Underwood? Dr. Underwood, I got a text during your presentation that Sean Harrington has ordered the books you recommended for the board. So everybody don't rush out. They're a little pricey. I did look at them. They're a little pricey, but that's okay. We can handle that. In closing, again, I want to remind the board to stay focused. Don't get tired of this, but stay focused on our mission and our method of education. We are in a listening and learning mode now, but we're also taking action. If you just listen to the reports that we had from Richard and Mike and Jean, we're doing some things. We have a lot of constituents to listen to, including our alums, parents, cadets, faculty, and I know we will be engaging with each of them as we move forward. These are very important issues that we have for us, and Dr. Underwood, we look forward, and Secretary Carney look forward to continued engagement with you on these issues. And as you heard today, the committees are looking at these issues and will report to the board shortly and over time, indeed. We expect General Winds that will have a recommendation for us within the first couple of weeks of in January that he will send to us, and we will be able to discuss it at the next board meeting. General Winds has been going through what we refer to on the board as a shorthand, all the taskers, the 30 major and the 150 or so subtaskers. And at last report, General Winds was through half of them. But those things are being fleshed out that will put meat on the bones of the 5 pillars of our program. We don't have a timetable. As Richard aptly put it, we do have tailwinds on us. But we don't have a timetable. We have to make sure that what we do is right for VMI, is right for what our goals are, what we're trying to accomplish, certainly in terms of diversity and inclusion. But we need to be deliberate, we need to be thoughtful, and we need to make sure we get it right. We have this investigation that we're going to deal with, and we obviously look forward to it and will cooperate with it and look forward to any recommendations they have to make BMI better able to accomplish its mission in an improved fashion. But we're not being passive. As I said, we're taking actions. We took some significant actions at the October board meeting. The 3 committee reports we got today show continuing to head in the right direction. It'll be interesting to see the job description for our Chief Diversity Officer. As I mentioned, that will be an administration hire. And at least in my thinking is that whoever the permanent superintendent is, ought to make that hire. And maybe we should be discussing, and Dr. Underwood, be interested in your input on this, whether we should have an interim CDO whose job might be to describe his job, create the job, his or her job. What should it be? What all should be involved? But it's obviously an important position, and the person who is our next permanent superintendent needs to be heavily involved in making that hire.
Mr. Boland?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to just interject just very quickly my thoughts about that.
Yeah.
I think that the D&I subcommittee, I applaud them on all the work that they've done, and want to just say that I strongly encourage the sooner that VMI can make the decision, the administration can make the decision to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion with a position such as a Chief Diversity Officer or a Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, the better. I actually don't think you need to wait until you have the permanent superintendent on board, because that would suppose that there's not remember last week I talked about the urgency of the DEI strategy. So in the same way that you would hire anyone in a EWP for the state, I think that it would be important to do this search carefully, thoughtfully, above board, transparently, and allow it to be an administration hire. But I think it needs to be done post haste.
Well, I understand that. I just don't. I want to avoid a situation where we hire a chief diversity officer and then hire a new superintendent, and the new superintendent doesn't get along with the chief diversity officer and fires him. And that could happen. I mean, I don't expect it to happen, but it could happen.
Is there any other position, Mr. Boland, that the new president, will the new president be hiring an entire new staff from the interim superintendent? In that case, the other thing is that who will have the DEI institutional knowledge? If we don't hire someone right now under Major General Wins, who will have that DEI institutional knowledge to pass on to whomever you're going to hire as a superintendent? Whoever you hire as the permanent superintendent has to have and demonstrate that they are aware of these issues, that they are committed to threading DEI into the strategy and into the mission and vision, the unique mission of BMI. So I would think that I'm not so interested in whether or not you like me. This is business. This is I bring value to the institution, and this is what I can share with you. So I just push back respectfully, but I push back to say, I think you need to hire someone and move this search forward so that this person can help inform the work going ahead for the institution.
Well, thanks for those comments. I appreciate that. Well, anybody have any other matters to bring before the board? Joe Reeder?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to commend Dr. Underwood. These slides were inspired. Some of them are frankly painful. The one where you have all the sayings that people say, if you asked a vote of those listening, they would look at some of those comments, and I would vouchsafe that at least 75% would say, what's wrong with that? And you explained it. You explained it because of the history. Some of those I'm looking at, I'd take issue with you on, but I don't know the history. And you explained the history. One that's not on there that has a history is a statement, he's a good Christian. He was a good Christian. That's another one that, what's wrong with that? That's a good thing, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Well, there's a history. Another one that that's not on there that I've had my African-American friends tell me is a real problem is when you hear, I don't have a racist bone in my body. You know, that's not on there. And the pictures, the only other slide I mention is the one with the Dr. King on it, where you have the TSA motto, when you see something, say something. That's something that we teach leaders in the military. And we've had an example, and there's been one very eloquent board member who told me, you know, where were the cadets in the room when you had one African American and 19 other cadets, all white, who's listening to a professor reminisce on her Ku Klux Klan parents? You know, why didn't someone throw? That's a leadership thing. And not to pick on my dear friends in my second favorite service, the United States Navy, but same thing. You know, when you have tailhook and you got 20 guys in the room and folks are paddling women getting back to their rooms, where was the great Navy officer to say, hey guys, we can't do that? That's a leadership thing. And so that plays right into the role in the central mission of the Virginia Military Institute. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that, Mr. Reader. Those bystander statements, and there's so many more that help to institute or institutionalize the status quo and move us away from talking about and having these conversations, are things we can, the ones that you have issue with or the ones that you would challenge me on. These are things that we all say and we don't know it. They're also like euphemisms that we say, and people have checked me on it because of my incomplete knowledge of where we, you know, these comments or these phrases that we use all the time that have really been passed down generation after generation. But there's a historical antecedent for this work. And sometimes we're so far away from it that we really don't understand why we say and do some of the things that we say and do. And so it's just a matter of taking the time to understand how much power is in our language. And then that's how you inform these difficult conversations. So I appreciate, Mr. Reader, you elevating those bystander statements, and just trust me, there's so many others that we need to watch what we say. The world is watching us right now. The world is watching what VMI does. And I certainly am excited about VMI being a leader, not only for other military academies, but other institutions of higher education. This is an opportunity for you to shine. This is an opportunity for you to really say, you know what, I have an incomplete knowledge about all of this stuff, but I'm learning, and this is, I'm listening. I love that Mr. Boland said this is an opportunity for us to listen, because that's how we learn. Have conversations, be empowered with the tools that I put in your toolbox today. And just know that the work doesn't end. It's an every day. Every time we get to wake up in the morning, get another chance to be on this earth, we have another opportunity to get it right and make it right. So thank you so much for the time today to talk about having difficult conversations. And I hope it catches fire in the sense that, you know, this conversation will lead to another difficult conversation, and you will share today with a colleague, a friend, a family member, hey, maybe you shouldn't say, I just don't see color. Because I want you to see my color. It's who I am. It's what I bring with me. right? And, but I don't want you to see color in the sense that you use it against me, but I want you to understand what I bring to the table. And this is how you get to genuine diversity of thought. So thank you so much, Mr. Reader, for your comments.
All right, any other questions or comments? Mike?
Well, Mr. President, I purchased my book already, so do I get a reimbursement?
I don't think so.
Oh man, I thought I might get a reimbursement. But those resources were very helpful, and I'm not done with the first book, but I did order my books. I did my homework. You know, I was a good student. I did what the teacher asked me to do. So
good job. Good
just
job.
on a lighter note.
You get an A.
I get an A for the day.
You get a gold star. You get a gold star, Mike.
Thank you for sending that draft to Major General Wins. And you know, Mike, the other book that I would offer for the team, not that I'm asking you to order all these books, but you may just Google it and read the foreword. I'll say that. Read the, online. This is a very highly controversial one, but I would ask you all to read White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. There's some back and forth about whether or not it is a powerful book, but I encourage you, I've read it 3 times, and it's very powerful for people of color and those who aren't of color, so to speak, or the members of the white dominant culture. But I think that book over the holidays can maybe change some of those bystander statements that we all make. It will illuminate, Mr. Reader, for you and others on this call, what the history is behind these bystander statements, because it goes into detail more than I can on this Zoom call and gives you deep history behind the bystander statements.
General,
Dr.
any closing comments from you, sir?
Yeah, no, Mr. Boland, I would just tell you that I guess I got a lot of reading to do, because I'm going to get those 2 or 3 books that Dr. Underwood recommended. And since we're talking about books, I would just tell you that one that I'm reading right now that I would also recommend is by Isabel Wilkerson, called Cast.
Yes.
I highly recommend reading that. I think I'm about maybe a third of the way through. Very illuminating, very powerful in the portrayal and the stories that are being told. So all of these things are intended not to necessarily poke us, but just to kind of get us thinking and seeing things from a different perspective. So I'll have a busy holiday, and I know what I'm getting for Christmas. Thank you.
General, you might want to consider getting them on audio tape so you can listen in your car.
I might. That would help on the drives.
It would. It would.
Yep.
All right. There being no further business, Mr. Secretary and Dr. Underwood, we'll see you in a week. And thank you very much. And meeting is adjourned.